the group over the age of 45 is being neglected. So often when you're looking at fitness, when you're looking at diet, when you're looking at anything in the media, they love showing people that are in their 20s. You might be able to overexercise a bad diet when you're in your early 20s. You will not be able to pull that off in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s.
What if you could reclaim hours of free time each week, create legacy building wealth, and devote more energy to your passion projects without giving up on your career as a life-saving MD? Dr. Vikram Raya is a functional cardiologist, high-performance coach, and real estate expert. Is here to give you the tools, strategies, and solutions you need to transform your life, unlock your limitless potential, and achieve greatness, all while freeing up your precious time. Welcome to Limitless MD. Let's dive in.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Limitless MD. I'm your host, Vikram Raya, and today we have Dr. Derek Alessi. He is a man on a mission. He's going to help people over the age of 45 live their best life with nutrition, mindset, sleep optimization, and physical training that makes a 45-year-old outcompete a 25-year-old. So if you're interested in learning that, you want to tune in to this episode. Derek, welcome to the show, my friend.
You know, Vikram, thanks for having me on. I'm excited and I love the energy that you're bringing.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, I'm 46 myself. I'm about to turn 47 in May. So what you're saying is very applicable to me as well. When I wake up, it's not like I used to when I was in 20, where I would jump out of bed, boom, 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 boom. In fact, I used to wake up at 4:30, not a big deal. And I'd be able to crank it out to like midnight. But I'm noticing as I age, I have to change my parameters, change my techniques. What happens after the age of 45, and why did you end up focusing on this segment of folks?
Well, to answer the second question first, I think the group over the age of 45 is being neglected. So often when you're looking at fitness, when you're looking at diet, when you're looking at anything in the media, they love showing people that are in their 20s. And because of it, so many people would come to me and say, I just don't feel as though it's appropriate for me, or I feel self-conscious, or I'm too injured, I'm too old, I'm too tired, I'm too sick. And it's really not the case. You can improve, and you can improve at any level as long as you're doing the right things. Now, in terms of the body, of course, we are going to age. And by the way, that is part of the process. We want to, but we want to age well. So to get you at age 45 outperforming a 25-year-old, honestly, I do not see that as being an issue at all, especially for you. In fact, what I would say is even over the age of 60, you're going to outperform most 25-year-olds in today's day and age, as long as you're doing it right with the right workout, the right diet, and the right recovery.
Let's talk about sort of the missteps, the pitfalls, the myths that people in their 40s are perhaps doing that they think will help them get the edge, but is actually slowing them down. Like, what is it that most 45, 40, 50-year-olds are doing that's probably wrong, that's common wisdom?
I think the first and foremost is they start chasing their career. They start chasing a dollar. They start chasing promotions. They start getting out of sorts with their priorities and goals. Now, that being said, with working with some folks that are ultra high achievers, you'll notice one thing in common. They'll always go back to them. They'll always go back to what they need to do and spend time on themselves. That could be fitness. That could be recovery and sleep. That could be meditation. That could be sharpening the saw, as Stephen Covey told us years ago. All of those things make you a better version of you. And I learned this story a long time ago. I was in my mid-20s, and one of my early clients was a gentleman that owned a sports franchise, and he was in his late 60s. And what he asked me is, he said, hey, do you mind giving me a key to your clinic? So if ever you're stuck in traffic or something happens or you oversleep, I could continue to do what I need to do. And I thought that was a very odd request because nobody ever asked me that before. And I said, why do you think I'm not going to be there? And he said, because you're young, you're going to have something come up. You're going to oversleep. It's not going to be a priority. And for me, I'm going to make this my priority no matter what. So, of course, it led to a question of, well, aren't you ultra busy? Don't things pop up all the time? And his answer was, I am 20,000 times busier than you could ever imagine. But I need to spend this time on myself because those things are not going anywhere. So if I don't spend this time, I can't handle those and take care of those problems. So the refocus is back on self. Focus on self, improve self, and you can do so much more and effortlessly than ever before.
It reminds me of Brian Dyson was the CEO of Coca-Cola, and he made a speech to the commencement class of 1991 at Georgia Tech, and he's talking about juggling and juggling life and priorities, and he used the analogy of the 5 balls. And when you're juggling, things can drop, and so he's like, be careful, because when you're juggling, there's usually 5 main priorities. It's your vitality, your mindset, your family or your relationships, your work or career, and some other category, right? And so of those, your relationships and your health and vitality are made out of glass. Everything is made out of rubber. You can bounce back from those, but if you drop the other 2, you're screwed. So it really resonates here with what you're saying, Derek, in terms of you can't forgo self-care. You can't forgo recovery. We can't forgo, the fundamentals of what keeps our physiology strong.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. In fact, I was smiling when you were saying that story, because an analogy I often use, and you might be a little bit too young to remember this, but on the old Ed Sullivan show, there would be a guy that would come out and he would spin the plates. And he would spin all the plates on top of these poles. And as soon as one would start to wobble and lose the speed, he'd have to quickly run back over. And it was kind of the same type of thing where you're juggling these 5 balls, you're spinning these plates. And sometimes these plates, which of course are made of ceramic, can drop and break. But the whole thing is, life is about that constant juggle, that constant motion. Without having your energy, with your vitality, with your health, how can you possibly handle those things? It's just going to be too challenging, and you're not going to want to, and they are going to fall and break.
So fitness for 45-year-olds, how is that different than any other age group?
It starts changing when you start getting the first ache and pain. So oftentimes it's led by orthopedic conditions. So often people will say, I would love to exercise, but you have to understand, I have a bad lumbar spine. I would love to exercise, but you have to understand, I need a knee replacement, or I've had rotator cuff surgery. So it usually will start with something like that. Now, first and foremost, and no disrespect to the medical community, many times a person is going to their physician and their physician saying, well, don't go to the gym right now. Let this heal, relax, don't stress it out. Unfortunately, though, that goes against what physical therapy really is. Physical therapy is taking an injury, addressing the imbalance, and making it better. Then if I put my exercise science hat on, I'm going to respect the physical therapy, but at the same time, we have 639 muscles in the body. There's a lot of other things that we can work in the meantime. And these 2 modalities can be worked together, not just to enhance your metabolism and your strength, but also to overcome injury so you're less apt to have it in the long run to start with. So it's really interesting how people think in the limitations they put on themselves, and really for no good reason. So that is one of the major things that we start with.
You mentioned metabolism. I've noticed in myself and others, like, that is something that if you're not conscious of and trying to improve, it can really, no matter what you eat, if you don't have the metabolism, it's going to be very hard to get the ideal % body fat you want, the look, the physique, if you want to have visible abs or whatever else you just want to tone down. So let's talk about metabolism in its totality, and like, what are the keys to maintaining that metabolic furnace in our bodies?
So when we talk about aging, we talk about hitting a metabolic peak or a biological peak. And for men, it's a little bit later than women, but still it's widely regarded being somewhere between 22 to 27 years of age. After that, we start losing our muscle tissue naturally. So we start going through this aging process or atrophy process. And in the process of doing so, we start losing our muscle tissue. And a lot of people aren't aware that the fact that your muscle tissue is your metabolism. So the metabolic equation is every 1 pound of muscle on the human body is responsible for somewhere between 35 to 50 calories burned per day. When you start losing muscle tissue, you're not going to burn as much. So yes, when you were younger, it is no illusion. When you were younger, you had more natural muscle tissue. You may have also been more active, especially in sports. So your nutrition didn't have to be as good. And yes, you could maintain lower body fat %, or if you were higher, you could drop quicker. As you're aging, since you don't have that to rely upon, the metabolic furnaces you just mentioned, it's going to be more challenging and difficult. Now, of course, at any age, if you address it, you can improve it. So yes, even in your 60s, 70s, 80s, or beyond, you could gain muscle tissue or lean tissue. It's not going to happen at the rate that it was when you were in your 20s, but it can still improve. And also, if as long as it's not declining or decreasing, you're still going to be ahead of the curve. So that has to be the focus, which of course will introduce strength training.
So people talk about strength training and they see this as a venue. But I've seen people who religiously, they have a trainer, they strength train twice a week. Most of the other days they don't do much and they don't get the results. So what are they missing?
Well, I think there's a couple things they're missing just from a strength training point of view. Hopefully they're doing at least one more day of activity on their own, even if it's not with a trainer. So I think you need a little bit more frequency. Usually for some people, most people, 3 times per week would be about the minimum. And as you get more advanced, you would need more than that, 4 times per week, 5 times per week. Olympic athletes might work out twice a day. So you do need more the more advanced you are. But number 2, you're not going to over-exercise.
Let me stack on what you're saying, Dr. Derek. It's interesting, guys, what he just said, and I want to emphasize it. It's if you're workout naive or strength training naive, then it doesn't take as much to really get your body to start metabolically burning. But if you're used to working out at some certain level, then the threshold has increased, and that's exactly what you're saying, Dr. Derek.
Exactly. If I'm just learning to play a musical instrument, I could get better at 20 minutes at a time. But if I'm pretty good, that's not going to help. I need to do much more than that. So the skill of the training itself, the frequency of the training itself, the same with school. I don't need to do as much homework when I'm in first grade than when I'm in graduate school. It's the same thing with training. And then none of that has anything to do with nutrition. So we've all heard the term, you can't exercise or out-exercise a bad diet. And as you age, oh my goodness, that becomes more and more of a thing. You might be able to over-exercise a bad diet when you're in your early 20s. You will not be able to pull that off in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s.
So that's where nutrition comes in. So there's tons of diets out there. There's tons of strategies. In general, I've been telling people more of like this paleo vegan kind of diet, pegan diet, if you will. It's, a certain amount of protein that you need, a ton of vegetables, and limiting dairy, limiting grains, and complex carbs, and don't try to drink your calories. Eat your calories, and then a lot of fluids, and then obviously like some core supplements, right? But can you give us some more texture of like if you had to encapsulate what is the ideal diet for a 45-year-old man or a woman, what would it be?
I'm going to answer it in 2 ways. Number 1, just from a textbook point of view, I would love to reduce cellular inflammation. I want to turn insulin down. And the way to turn insulin down is I have to be very careful of things that will increase my blood sugar or glucose quickly. And you kind of mentioned it. A lot of the grains, a lot of the sugars, a lot of the alcohols, those are not going to help. They're going to cause problems and they're going to increase insulin. So I am going to focus on proteins. I am going to focus on fats, and I'm going to try to keep my carbohydrates mainly to vegetables, certain fruits, possibly some legumes, but I want to stay away from the grains and the starches and the sugars and all the other things that you just mentioned. So that would be first and foremost. But secondly, I think it doesn't have to be an absolute. Most people that come to see me aren't asking to be in the next Olympic Games or on the stage of a bodybuilding or a figure contest. So I think you need a little bit of wiggle room. There is nothing that can't be consumed. There's no nevers. So if you said, well, geez, isn't ice cream terrible for you? Isn't corn terrible for you? Isn't sugar or alcohol terrible for you? They are. I can't make an argument that they're good for you, but it doesn't mean you can't consume them. But we do need a strategy that takes the frequency into consideration. If the frequency is every day, you're having way too much. So we have to kind of look at the frequency of it and say, hey, this is the time, this is the place, this is when we're going to enjoy them. And these are the reasons why. And then, of course, we could get back on track and lower the insulin by eating the good things we were talking about before.
Okay. So you got to make it realistic, right? Unless you're going for like a physique show or a bodybuilding show where, you need like 3% body fat or something. You got to have it where this is it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle, as people say. So how do you make this where at least you're winning 80 to 90% of the time, right? So having these days where you have some flexibility allows it to be sustainable. And if it's not sustainable, it's not going to serve you long term.
Totally agree. So there's two things that you really need to make that happen. The first thing, and this is the harder thing to do, the harder thing is you have to start identifying yourself as being a fit, athletic person. Now, that seems hard to believe for a lot of people that struggle, that might be high body fat, high weight. They might say, well, no, you don't understand. I'm not a fit person. I'm not a healthy person. I'm not an in shape person. Well, in school, if I wanted better grades, I can't keep saying to myself, I'm a bad student, I'm a bad student, I'm a bad student, because I'm going to keep doing what bad students do. I'm not going to go to class. I'm not going to do my homework. I'm not going to perform well on midterms and finals. I'm just not going to be able to. But if I start convincing myself that I'm a good student, guess what? I attend all my classes, I take notes, I ask good questions, I do my homework, and then my grade point average will improve on my evaluations. Health and fitness and nutrition are the same thing. So don't picture yourself as the out of shape person that brought you in the door. Start picturing yourself and identifying yourself as a health and fit person, and you'll do what health and fit people do. They don't miss workouts. They don't make excuses. They don't just blow off their diet. They're very careful and thoughtful of it because they're health and fitness persons, and you can be as well. So the mindset shift is the hard work, and it has nothing to do with anything physical. You're not lifting weights. You're not sweating. You're not sore. You're not waking up early in the morning. You're just shifting your mindset, and you'll already have more success. Now, the second part of it is...
Let me just weigh in on what you were just saying. It's amazing what you just said, because it really identifies to what we were talking about. So it's identity reshaping, right? It's adopting a new identity. When people want to quit smoking, they can just either say, hey, I'm a smoker, I'm going to reduce my smoking or quit smoking, or they can adopt the identity of a non-smoker. A non-smoker is like, oh my God, I would never smoke. It's that subtle shift. They both are trying to quit smoking, but one is change their identity and they don't associate with that activity any longer, while the other one is trying to wean off or reduce. The second thing is, I've seen this work a lot, and this could be a hint for a lot of the listeners here. You know, with AI out there, you can really make yourself look like anyone you want. So imagine taking your face and putting it on a super fit body and making that your screensaver on your phone. So now every time you look at your phone, which is like 266 times a day for most people, that you're seeing that new identity right there, and it's reinforcing that. So now you're like, oh, that's the real me. Okay. So, but go ahead, Dr. Derek. It's really amazing what you're saying.
No, I completely agree. To take one half step further than that, what most of us do is we cram as a bad student. So if you think about health and fitness, what we're doing is we're saying, I'm a bad student, but I'm going to stay up for 3 nights straight. I'm going to cram everything, try to memorize it, possibly get through a midterm or final, and then go back to my old habits and do a brain dump. That's what we do with health and fitness in this country. We make these short-term shifts. I'm going to go to the gym every day. I'm going to eat pure keto. I'm going to shoot Ozempic or any GLP-1 drug, but I've never changed me. I've never changed my mindset. So I'm going to struggle in this bad student mentality, which of course is going to cause yo-yoing with our diet and fitness. We're going to lose, we're going to gain, and it's going to keep going on and on and on until we address the main issue, which is what you're identifying with. So I completely agree with you in every way. I think that's amazing. Now, secondly, after you do that work, that hard work, you have to do it consistently enough so that it becomes easier by the day. What a lot of people don't realize is that fitness and nutrition is also a skill. And some people will argue, they'll say, no, it's knowledge. It's having knowledge. Well, the knowledge part most people have, or at least if they don't, they could acquire it relatively quickly. But the skill of it does take time. Nutrition on paper is one thing. This is the strategy. This is how we're going to eat. We're going to prioritize protein. We're going to prioritize good omega fats. We're going to eat vegetables, and we're going to eliminate things that increase our blood sugar. That's on paper. But then we couple with, now life gets in the way. Now I'm busy. Now I'm stressed. Now I have something going on. Now I'm anxious. Now I'm happy. I'm sad. I'm lonely. I'm tired. I'm depressed. I have all these emotions going on, and all of my knowledge of all of this stuff goes out the window. So that part is the skill, and most people never stay with it long enough to start getting better at that skill. They do something short term. They set a goal, and boom, back to the bad habits again. So my goal with all of my clients is, how do I make tomorrow even easier than today. So if I could keep doing these good habits, cravings decrease, mindset improves, muscles get stronger, tomorrow's easier than today, and so on and so on.
So let's move on to really muscle enhancement. And how do we, let's say people in general, most people work out 2 to 3 times a week, they cardio, maybe a little flexibility, they take a couple of supplements and they're okay. They're, either maintaining their age or they're anti-aging slightly. What's the next level? How do we 10x this whole thing?
Love it. I'm a big fan of that. And that, of course, is once we start moving through 2nd grade and 3rd grade and 4th grade, we got to keep going, right? So same type of thing. Once you develop that base, I think the next natural thing is, can I either increase the intensity of my workouts, increase the frequency of my workouts, and improve the overall nutrition of my day? By increasing the frequency intensity, that's pretty straightforward of the workouts. By increasing my nutrition, there's more things we could start looking at. Now, what is my frequency? I was eating starches and sugars 2-3 times a week. Now I'm eating it just 1 time per week. Now I'm taking in more good fats. I'm having more omega-3 fats, omega-9 fats. I'm getting rid of omega-6 fats because they're causing too much cellular inflammation. For example of that, I'm taking in more things like olive oil, macadamia nut oil. I'm taking in good cold pressed fish oil, and I'm decreasing my inflammatory oils, such as any kind of cottonseed, linseed, canola, anything like soybean oil. I'm trying to get rid of those things. And then lastly, I'm doing it consistently to make sure that I'm not getting any insulin spikes. And when that happens, all of a sudden my body fat percent goes from 40% to 30% to 20% to 15% just by following that alone. Can it go even lower than that? You bet. But that would be the easiest way to get it down to 15% and make it sustainable.
So yeah, I want to break down like the healthy oils and all that, but let's what's the framework when people are saying, hey, look, I eat really clean. I buy from Whole Foods. I make all my meals fresh. Isn't that enough? Why do I need to supplement? And it's a common question I get. Hey, our ancestors never supplemented. They were healthy. Why do we need to do this? What's going on? I buy the best ingredients. So what is the case for supplementation, and what's the right way to do it? And then I want to hear your top 5 or top 7.
Yeah, I think if they are making their own meals and they are buying the right foods, they're 90% of the way down the road. Already, they're head and shoulders above everyone else. So I couldn't agree more. When it comes to our ancestry, yes, of course. If you go back long enough, you only could fish or hunt. That was it. You could fish or hunt, and you better be pretty good at it. Otherwise, you didn't eat. So that lasted the first 2.7 million years of human evolution. So a long time. Farming and agriculture is pretty recent. It's 10 to 12,000 years ago. So when people say, well, why do I have a hard time with grains? Why do I have a hard time with some of these things? Because they're newer in human evolution. Our bodies aren't as used to it. So yes, our ancestors didn't have the same problems, but also too, they didn't have all the same modern problems that we do in today's day and age that we do. When it comes to supplementation, you have to think about what the word supplement means. It means in addition to. And I think so often the supplement companies, and by the way, of course, I run a supplement company, but so often they say, no, it's in replace of eating. And it was never meant to be. It was in addition to. So if I'm taking something in addition to good nutrition, I could enhance it. An example would be, can I take in extra protein if it was in a protein powder? Yes, it would be convenient. It would be easy. I could carry it with me. I wouldn't have to worry about cooking on the spot if I wasn't able to. So something like that can help the convenience of life. Same with something like fish oil. I mentioned fish oil before. I can't always cook deep water wild-caught fish. But if I'm taking the right type of fish oil supplement, it is something I could take on a regular basis to supplement my good nutrition. So I think it could easily be worked in to enhance everything else that you're doing. It doesn't work in a vacuum. You still need to do the right things. But once you're doing the right things, it can enhance it and make life easier.
So what are your essentials? What do you take personally? What do you recommend for like high performers, CEOs, athletes, extreme sports figures, what would you recommend? What is their core essential supplements? Now, I know some people who over supplement where they take, I don't know, 30, 50 supplements a day. I know Brian Johnson has been a big proponent of, he's the not dying guy. And he really does take a significant number of supplements, which I don't think is sustainable for most people. So what is realistic, what is economic, and what is validated by data, and what makes the most sense for high performers?
Yeah, if you ask me my top 5, I think it's very straightforward. First and foremost is going to be a protein powder. Now, that is an extremely general topic. Now, there are so many different qualities and kinds of protein, but in general, though, we want to eat protein that absorbs into our muscle tissue. So the big boring word is called bioavailability. That really means if we're eating it, is it getting into our muscle tissue? And there's many different sources and types of protein. In general, though, I'm a huge fan of grass-fed protein. It's going to be higher in iron, higher in B vitamins. It's going to be better sources of omega-3 acids. However, each country has different standards of what they call grass-fed. A lot of people don't realize this, but the United States, most of the grass-fed is only grass-fed less than 30% of the feed time, which is very low. Now, other countries have different standards. We use New Zealand because it's the only country in the world that has 100% grass-fed. So if it's called grass-fed, it's got to be 100% of the time. So grass-fed protein, which is something we have at Strength Genesis, is something I would start with. Number 2 would be, and I mentioned it a couple times, fish oil. But fish oil, a lot of people don't realize, is extremely fragile to temperature. So fish oil hits a smoke point of 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you exceed it, it breaks down those fragile omega-3 and 9 fatty acids and it renders them impotent, which you don't want. So years ago, prescription fish oil, a lot of people thought prescription fish oil was just stronger. It's really not. It's the right blend of fish oil, but at the same time, they're cold processing it at ultra cold temperatures. And that's what led to the astronomical price. So GlaxoSmithKline came out with Lovaza, and that fish oil was cold processed, and that's why they charged $1,200 per month for it. That patent, by the way, has expired. We make the same fish oil that they use for a fraction of the price at Strength Genesis. So cold processing the fish oil would be number 2. It's good for the heart. It's good for your brain. It's good for every cell in your body. Lowers triglycerides, lowers blood pressure. I would add that. Some other things that I would look at is creatine monohydrate. Creatine monohydrate is something that the sports supplement world has known for a long time, but now we're seeing more and more case studies amongst elderly, diabetics, and women more than ever before. And it will enhance your workouts because it will give you more energy during the workout. You're able to do more stamina, build more muscle tissue. But we're also now seeing the connection that it does help cognitive function as well. Wow. So on all of those counts, I love it. The problem that a lot of people have with it is either they're scared of it or they don't want to be inconvenienced by adding this extra powder to their supplement or to their protein or to their drink. We put it in sugar-free gummies, which makes them something very easy to take in. You want to take in about 5 grams per day. So that would be number 3. Number 4 would be MCT oil. MCT oil, which of course got very popular with the whole bulletproof coffee phase, but it's been around a lot longer than that. And once again, it was originally studied for anti-dementia, even going back to the 1960s. So anti-dementia, but it does enhance burning more calories too, because it heightens ketosis. It helps transport the sugar from the liver so that you could utilize it for fat quicker and the liver doesn't hold on to the sugar as long. So that would be number 4. And number 5 is something a little bit milder. I love apple cider vinegar. I think it's wonderful for digestive health. We're seeing that two big things is happening in sports supplements. Number 1 is anything to improve gut biome and digestibility. And secondly is anything for brain enhancement, which we talked about with the creatine and the MCT oil. Those are the new frontiers when it comes to sports supplements. So I would say apple cider vinegar. We put it in sugar-free apple cider vinegar gummies because the oil can be harsh for a lot of people, but that's something you definitely want to add to your arsenal. So that's my top 5.
I love that. I really love that. And there's some new ones in there that I wasn't expecting. So that's really cool. And, if I could just harbor on creatine a little bit, when you're talking about this, I take it and I've been taking it for years and I find it as a part of my protocol. But, my parents are in their 70s, and I'm like, wouldn't it be interesting if they got on it? And wouldn't it help them with cognitive, even though they're doing fine, the cognitive function, their strength, it could help, improve their workouts. And so it got me thinking of older people on creatine.
Yeah, so when you go to PubMed and you start looking at a lot of the research on it, you'll see that there's more and more studies happening with an older population. Once again, I can't describe how this supplement was really pigeonholed into young athletes and or bodybuilders for the longest time. And it probably shouldn't have. So it's been around really since the late 1980s, but most people are only hearing about it now. It does help in all those situations. I've seen a lot, though, on insulin sensitivity and creatine supplementation, which is extremely interesting if you want to go with the fact that 1 out of 3 persons in the United States right now are either pre-diabetic or diabetic. So it can help enhance that as well.
Let's talk about insulin resistance. I have a lot of people I know in my colleagues, my circles, obviously older people, even younger people, unfortunately, it's a common thing. Insulin resistance, I would probably say it's 1 out of 3 people walking around at some form or shape, right? Pre-diabetes, maybe taking it the next level, and then eventually diabetes. What's a protocol to overcome insulin resistance in 6 weeks? What would you do if one of your best friends has insulin resistance and you want to get them not going on metformin one day? What would you do?
Eat better. I would eat a lot better. I know you said before, like paleo. Paleo is a great place to start. Paleo, if you followed a paleo diet, if you followed any of those diets, by the way, it could be Mediterranean, paleo. If you want to get more advanced of keto, carnivore, Atkins, any of those types of things, or even a flexible approach to it, just by reducing the grains, the sugars, the easy starches that you're getting rid of out of your diet, you're going to get more insulin sensitive, which is going to be good. That's where I'd start with. Yes, everything else will help. Sleep will help. Training will help. Supplementation, creatine monohydrate will help. Apple cider vinegar will certainly help too. All of those things will help. But first and foremost, it doesn't matter what you take. You could take metformin. Heck, you could shoot insulin. But unless you change your nutrition, it's not going to matter much. You're still going to go down that slippery slope. Nutrition must change. And we talked about it before. It has to change with your mindset. Do that. And that would be the quickest way to reverse that insulin sensitivity.
All right. So I'm going to switch gears here, my friend. We're going to go into you as a doctor, PhD, created this groundbreaking clinic. Tell me about that clinic. Tell me how many years you've had it. And then tell me about the transition to starting a side hustle, which turned out to be an amazing adjunct to your current practice, which is the supplement company.
So for me, it's pretty straightforward. I had nothing to do with fitness or nutrition whatsoever. In fact, I was going to be a dentist. Yeah, no, I was going to go to dental school. And the reason why is I had 2 reasons. Number one is I had an uncle that was a very successful dentist. And number 2 is I was 244 pounds in high school. So I wasn't health, I wasn't fitness, I wasn't that at all. Never thought of it. But luckily in undergrad, I had to take some prerequisite classes of exercise science, which I'm going to date myself here, back in 1988, 1989, was a pretty new field of study. Not many people had heard of it before. So I started taking these classes, and honestly, it's not that it interested me to do it as a business. It interested me as an individual. I wanted to get in better shape, or at least it dawned on me that I could, and that there was a science behind it. So that's what started and triggered the whole thing for me. And then it became, well, I can start working as a personal trainer while I'm in undergrad, because I need to get some money. I just need to collect some money, some gas money at the time. So I started training people on the side, and then it kind of snowballed from there. My interest grew, my passion for it grew, my passion for learning nutrition grew. And from it, I developed this clinic, which I've been doing now a little over 30 years.
30
now,
years. Wow.
Yeah, a little over 30 now. We're not a gym. We're not a health club. Exercise is a part of what we do. We focus on 45 years of age and above, but it's really broken down into 3 things: fitness, nutrition and dietetics, and accountability with tracking. And we work with this population that is a little bit older, that has orthopedic conditions, that has medical conditions, blood pressure, blood sugar, thyroid disorder is probably the top 3 of all of them. and we help improve their lifestyle, decrease their body fat, and hopefully decrease and eliminate medication. So that has been my life for the past 30 plus years. Strength Genesis, my side hustle, started about 7 years ago. And it was because I wanted to start creating the right foods and food supplements of the highest quality I could find. So when I said before protein powder and I mentioned New Zealand grass-fed protein, it's because that has the highest standard, but I really couldn't find it in the health food stores. That's why I started creating it.
So
Fish
you were
oil,
solving a problem for yourself and for your clients.
yes, I only make what I take,
That's great. I love that.
right? So if I don't take it, I don't make it. So that was number one. I wanted the highest quality ingredients. I wanted the same fish oil that the pharmaceutical companies were making. I wanted the highest quality of everything. And then lastly, I wanted to put it in packaging that didn't contain plastic. So when you walk into the health food store, it's a sea of plastic. You see these big plastic tubs that the protein is in. Every vitamin, every pill is in a plastic container. And a lot of people don't know the fact that plastic is a petroleum byproduct. And no, it's not good for the environment, but it is terrible for the human body.
The
It can
microplastic.
increase,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
When you talk about the cancer and how it could change your estrogen levels, it makes body fat more stubborn. It could affect dementia and Alzheimer's disease, so many things, and we're taking in so much plastic. So we wanted to take all of these highest quality products and put them in sustainable packaging. So our protein powder, get this, comes in aluminum metal containers. Right? So it's the same food grade aluminum that you would put like, pardon the pun, like a beer can in it. So it's completely food grade. So it doesn't leach any of these plastics or the byproducts. The same thing too with our oil. So our fish oil, our macadamia nut oil, which is the world's greatest cooking oil, our extra virgin oil salad dressing, they're all in glass containers. They're not in plastic. So it's going to be made out of glass or metal or paper because less plastic in the environment, less plastic in your body. So I switch hats during the day. During the first half of my day, I work all clinic. We start at 5 in the morning. So 5 in the morning is when we start seeing our first clients. Now, I work out before we start seeing clients. So I get my workouts in before that. So
What
the
time
question
do you
then
wake up?
becomes is, what time do I wake up? So I usually wake up at 2:30 to 2:45.
Wow. And you sleep at?
I went to sleep 3 hours ago. You don't realize this, but I'm sleep talking right now. I like to be asleep completely at 9 p.m.
Okay.
8 if I can, 9 at the latest. My body pops up, no alarm, no nothing at about 2:30, which really upsets my wife. But nonetheless, I wake up, I pop up. First thing I must do is work out. So before I eat, before I do anything, I'm going to train, I'm going to lift, and I want to do it where nothing can get in my way. No emails, no phone calls, no people, no humans. I don't want to see another human until after I do my training, because to me, that is my priority. It has given me all the energy, all the effort, everything in my life. I could go back to the discipline of doing my training. And then my day starts and I get into the day.
That's awesome. And your second half of your day is worked on your supplements?
Yeah, so luckily I have 2 office buildings that are next to each other, and I could switch hats easily. I have one set of employees that do nothing but the clinic side, and then I have a different staff that we do nothing but Strength Genesis sports supplement side, and then we spend the rest of the day working on that. So I go back and forth between the two, and I can't imagine a better way to do it. And then when the day's over, I have to quickly run out and take care of my kids. So I get the hustle, I get the pace. We're all on this extreme pace. There is a way to figure it out as long as you have it all laid out with your priorities.
Man, thanks for sharing everything. Thanks for sharing about your day, your workday split, your passions, your origin story. I'm learning a lot. I'm sure a lot of my listeners are as well. Let me drill down a little bit. Is it a passion or is it an entrepreneurial success? The supplement company. Would you recommend this as for others who are as passionate as you are about starting something like this, like a supplement or something that they believe in? And what were some of the successes so far, and what have been some of the pitfalls?
Well, yeah, I think if you're following your passion, you're never really going to go wrong. If you do something that you love, you never worry about burnout. So often somebody will say to me, aren't you worried about burnout? How can you keep this pace? You're not young anymore. I always beg to differ, but
How old are you, by the way?
I'm 53.
Very nice. That's awesome.
53. Burnout to me is something that happens emotionally. If I start feeling hopeless, if I feel depressed, if I feel something emotionally, that's what leads to burnout. I'm not worried about my energy level. I'm not worried about my strength. I'm not worried about that at all. So my immune system, none of that. I don't have to worry about those things because I've been checking all the boxes along the way, but you do have to take control of your emotions to make sure that that doesn't lead to burnout. When you're following your passion, you're less likely to do so. So if you're looking at doing another career that's passion based, it could be golf, it could be music, it could be whatever it is that you love. It could be rockets. Follow it because you won't burn out from it. Okay, so that would be the thing that I would mention. When it comes to successes, yes, it started with a couple products. First and foremost, right now we have a product that's our Origin salad dressing that has been on fire. We have not been able to produce enough. We sell out every single month for this, and we have been for several months straight. And the reason why is it's a keto salad dressing. It doesn't change your blood sugar level at all. There's no carbs, there's no sugar, and it's the only dressing that's 100% extra virgin olive oil, so you don't have to refrigerate after opening. Now, most salad dressings, in fact, all salad dressings, you have to refrigerate after opening. A lot of people don't know why. And the reason why is they're using cheap filler oils that must be refrigerated. They're using soybean oil or canola oil, and they're cutting the extra virgin olive oil. We don't. So you put this right on the counter, put it right in the cabinet, and it has literally, month over month, we can't keep up with it. It's just been completely crazy and bonkos with it, and it's delicious. The second thing is, are you familiar with the author Tim Ferriss?
Of course.
4-Hour Body, 4-Hour Work Week, 4-Hour Everything. In 4-Hour Body, he started talking about this product that he called the new olive oil. The new olive oil, he was referring to Australian macadamia nut oil, which I never heard of. And by the way, I was huge into olive oil. Both sides of my family were from Italy. So we had nothing but olive oil my whole life. So new olive oil, I was very intrigued. So I bought a bottle of this Australian macadamia nut oil, and honestly, it was delicious. But Tim was really promoting it because it was high heat stable. So a lot of people don't realize olive oil is a good oil, but it's not a great cooking oil because it breaks down at 350 degrees. This oil, this macadamia nut oil, was rated for 515 degrees. I've even brought it up to 620 degrees, and it doesn't break down. So it's extremely durable, high heat stable, and even stronger in omega-3 and 9 fats than even olive oil. So I bought it, loved it, started buying some for clients. They loved it. They wanted more. I started buying more and selling it. And then the US distributor went out of business. So I called the refinery in Australia, spoke to their team and said, can you sell me some oil? And they said, yeah, we totally could sell you some oil. I said, awesome, because I need some for my clients. And I said, how much can I buy? And they said, well, we only sell it by the metric ton. I said, you sell it by the metric ton? I just want 100 bottles. They said, no. You have to bottle it yourself. I said, well, I don't know how to do that. They said, you have to import it yourself. I said, I don't know how to do that. They said, you need a license for it. I said, I don't have a license for it. So there was 19 extremely important steps and I had none of them. So I had to go through all of those things. And it was the scariest thing in my life, buying a metric ton of macadamia nut oil. And that was about 7 years ago. And just to put it into perspective, we probably bring in 300 metric tons a year.
Oh my God.
Now. So that was the scariest thing that I had to go through ever. And I blame it all on Tim Ferriss.
So I've heard all the successes. Tell me the challenges of owning a supplement company.
It got extremely interesting during COVID. Trying to get any type of product became a nightmare. Everything that you heard about, of course, regarding shipping, regarding rates, regarding importation, customs, it was backed up beyond belief and things got wicked expensive. So looking at the whole thing, obviously when you start a business and you have all of this inventory and all of these products, you have a lot of credit and a lot of money on the line. I have all this money on the line, and honestly, for months, I didn't know what was going to happen. Things were getting more expensive by the day. I couldn't get products of what we were selling. Other things weren't selling. People were scared. It was hard. It was really tough times, and we didn't know where we were going to go with it. Luckily, the ship kind of righted again, but during that time period, it was extremely stressful. I just kept trying to rely upon the fact that, hey, listen, you've gone this far. You're not stopping now. Just keep going along with what you know, stay with your routine, and hopefully something will work out that's good. Eventually it did. And then since that time, business has been even stronger. So all in all, those were some pretty tough times.
Yeah. What's your advice for someone who wants to start a supplement company? What's your one last piece of advice?
Well, do your research. It's very interesting and intriguing, but it takes more capital to start up than you could possibly imagine. Be comfortable with the fact that you're probably going to lose money for at least 3 years. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. And there's 2 ways to do this, by the way. I know we were talking a little bit off camera before about private equity and having capital. That's like the smart, grown-up adult way to do things, which certainly I didn't do. The other way is to finance it just out of your own pocket every step along the way, which is what I did, which is a totally different way to do it. Nobody would tell you to do it that way. But nonetheless, I bootstrapped this thing from the beginning, just running it out of my pocket until eventually we could right the ship. But it does take time, and you do need a good product. You only could sell snake oil so long, people get wise to it. But if you have a good product, it sells in the long run with less problems and less returns. So always go after quality.
All right, as we wrap up here, I have 2 questions that I like to end with. One is, what's a book that really changed your outlook on life or really gave you an aha moment in the last 12 months? And the last question was going to be, if I gave you a year's worth of signage at New York Times Square, what message would you have on there?
I love it. So the most influential book in the last 12 months, I was going to say 4 Hour Body because that clearly did, but that was probably within the last 10 years. In the last 12 months, I've really enjoyed reading a lot of David Sinclair stuff regarding longevity, that and Peter Attia regarding longevity. So Outlive would be one of them by far and away. I'm very intrigued by, I know you mentioned Brian Johnson before, and some people think what he's doing is genius. Other people think of what he's doing as being inauthentic and fraudulent. But nonetheless, I love looking at lifespan. Number 2 is New York Times. What I would do in terms of what message I want people to know.
Yeah, Times Square. What message would you want if I gave you a billboard or a digital sign? What would you want for the whole year for someone to see?
I want them to see my product line, to be honest with you. I'd love them to see Origin salad dressing.
No, but more, less marketing, my friend. I'm talking about more like, what's your message to the world?
I figured you were going with that. What I would say is this. I would probably give them the same advice as their first grade teacher. And you're not going to accomplish what you want to if you don't believe in yourself. You must have confidence, and you must convince yourself that you are a good student, you are a health and fitness person, you are smart, you are capable. You have to try to get rid of the doubts. So believe in yourself.
Love it. Love it. How can people get to know more about your clinics and obviously your supplement company?
Strength Genesis, strengthgenesis.com, or Google Strength Genesis. You'll see our entire product line there. In terms of our clinic, it is Dr. Derek Health and Fitness. Both of them will pop up pretty readily, and connect with me any way you can.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Derek. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Guys, thanks again for supporting the channel. Thanks for supporting the show. And guys, until next time, be phenomenal.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Limitless MD. If you found value from this episode, I encourage you to share this episode with a friend and let me know by leaving a review. For more information, make sure you check out the links in the show notes below or simply visit vikramraya.com. Until next time, be phenomenal.